Mike and Virginia Chevalier are not only diehard Broncos fans, but they've supported DNVR for a long time as DNVR members. They're a husband-wife team with over 15 years of experience, and since your home is likely to be one of your largest assets, and your mortgage your largest debt, they believe it is vital to consider your full financial picture when purchasing a home. This includes considering your short-term and long-term planning goals, your investments, and your tax situation. Mike and Virginia will work tirelessly to find the best loan for your situation. Visit them at dnvrmortgage.com, where you can also enter to win some sweet DNVR swag. They're your mortgage experts working up and down the front range. So call Mike and Virginia Chevalier at that's Chevalier Mortgage.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. Two goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. Three for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number four, we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
Oh, Mace. Oh, Mace.
It's a good song.
It's a great song, and our guy, the legendary Tim E, who wrote that song, was actually here at the DNVR bar tonight. Oh, unfortunately, the Broncos couldn't get a win for him or the rest of Broncos country tonight. What a weird game, Mace. I'm gonna have to watch it again to fully process it. I want to start with your single biggest takeaway from what we just watched.
It looked like two teams that didn't have preseason, it didn't have OTAs. Looked like two teams where the timing was off at times. You can go with the obvious with Stephen Gostkowski for the Titans, but the blocking wasn't effective at times for them. Now, there were some good plays by the front seven up front, in particular under the radar. I thought Jarrell Casey and Mike Purcell had great games out there today, and there wasn't room for Derrick Henry. But at the same time, you go to the Broncos offense, did some promising things, but also you look at the drop passes. Jerry Jeudy had some good moments, had two killer drops, especially that second one. Just looked like a couple of teams that were still kind of finding their way. Felt like the second preseason game that, unfortunately for the Broncos, happens to count in the standings.
Yeah, man, I think you summed up a lot of things really well there. I'll be honest. I'm going to go with my positive takeaway and my negative takeaway. My positive takeaway is that Drew Lock looked great, man.
Yeah, he did.
You take away a couple drops, and he ends up having an incredible game, in terms of just keeping your team in the game, making plays in big moments. Macy finishes the game 22 of 33, 216 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Again, it should have been 24 at least if you just had the 2 Jeudy drops. And we're probably talking about a win, unfortunately, if Jeudy makes that second catch.
Yeah.
So that's my main, my first takeaway is that I feel better about Drew Lock today, right now, than I did this morning. And I felt great about Drew Lock this morning.
Yeah, and the touchdown pass also, that was him. I mean, he's directing Noah Fant over to get in position, and credit to Noah Fant for responding. But that's what a true field general does. He's on the move. He's rolling out. He's in control of things. Drew Lock, he was under some pressure. He was outside the pocket, but he didn't seem uncomfortable at any moment out there. For all that you can kind of get into all the little things that derailed the Broncos, Drew Lock was arguably the reason why they were in this game.
Yeah, I would make that argument as well. Drew Lock and Noah Fant, who also had a great game. But, oh, man, the negative takeaway for me and the big one here is that I feel like the Broncos coaches let them down a little bit in this one. And the one that is going to stand out the most, and rightfully so, is Vic Fangio just completely mismanaging the clock at the end of the game. the only thing I could think of as to why he was doing that is he just thought like it doesn't matter. No, the Gostkowski's gonna miss it regardless. Like that's the only thing I could think of was going through his head, because I said it when they crossed the 40-yard line. I said, okay, time to start thinking about timeouts.
Right.
And then they ran a few more plays. And I'm like, time to start calling timeouts. And I thought, okay, maybe he'll call it at a minute. Didn't happen. He didn't call any. And the clock goes all the way down to 17 seconds before you get the ball back. Mace, this was a 2-point game.
Yeah.
If you give Drew Lock 35 seconds, he's got to get 25 yards to get them into field goal position. As you can probably hear, I'm beside myself. I have no idea what in the world was going through Vic Fangio's head at the end of this game.
Yeah, because you look at the possibilities there. Okay, if you don't call your timeouts as he did, what are you banking on? Are you banking on Gostkowski missing? Or are you banking on them scoring right away and then you saving the timeouts? But you can't rely on that. That's where you have to take control of what you can control in terms of in-game management. And you know what? There's a chance it wouldn't have worked if you start calling timeouts and then they get a couple of first downs, but they're kicking a last-second field goal. So, oh well, they're kicking it in the last second instead of you having 17 seconds and having a last gasp situation. But you have to take that chance to have what would have been a better shot. And you know what? Even if you start calling timeouts and the Titans score, if they score and there's still a touchdown, let's say they get a touchdown and there's still 45 seconds left on the clock, that's still a better scenario than having 17 seconds on the clock, even though you're only down 2. You've got to take timeouts in that scenario. You just have to. Yeah. And the funny thing is, he was actually having a pretty good game analytically. I mean, you get into the second quarter, going for it on 4th and 1 or 4th and goal, from the 1. A lot of people are going to wring their hands over that, and I think you can question the play call. But going for it on 4th and goal from the 1 was absolutely the right call there, rather than taking the points.
Yeah, I don't know about the play call itself, and that's what I'll come back to as an issue for me. I don't think it was a great game for Pat Shurmur. With that specifically being my biggest issue, but also the third quarter was an absolute disaster. And one of those drives, at the very least, was on him. I thought 2 bad play calls to start the drive, and they leave. They're stuck there with 3rd and 14. What do you expect? But man, the timeouts thing, that one I feel like we'll be talking about for 17 weeks here as something that I'll have a really hard time getting past with Vic Fangio. I can't comprehend it. And we'll have Zac Stevens joining us after he speaks with Vic Fangio, and maybe possibly Vic Fangio will give us something to help us understand why he made that decision at the end of the game. But man, again, like I said, you end up with 17 seconds, and I'm thinking to myself, all you got to do is hit one pass play up the middle here, and you actually have a chance. Well, you only got 3 plays off. If you just had 35 seconds, 30 seconds, you actually have a chance to win this football game. And Vic Fangio just didn't give his team a chance to do that. Couple other things, as expected, at least on my part, I thought Jerry Atachu and Malik Reed did a very good job filling in for Von Miller. I thought they were above serviceable. I thought Atachu specifically should have had 2 sacks, ended up with just 1 because of a crazy play by Tannehill, and also Atachu kind of trying to strip the ball rather than go for the sack, which, whatever, you'll live with that. But and then on top of that, the offense moved the ball really well in the first half. They moved it late. They had that big scoring drive late, or to take the lead in the fourth quarter. And you do have to remind yourself that this offense was extremely shorthanded. No Cortland Sutton, no Phillip Lindsay for the second half. Really hurt. I thought that was he was a big part of the game plan. Completely gone.
Although Melvin Gordon did look good after the fumble. I mean, obviously that's a core mistake in terms of things that went wrong. And, when you juxtapose that with Phillip Lindsay having never fumbled as a pro, and I tweet about that. And of course, the response in the social media universe of Broncos country was predictable, but he did bounce back very nicely. He was a reason why the Broncos weren't it. By the way, here's what Vic Fangio has said about not having the timeouts. And Zach tweeted this out. We would have used a timeout, but the running back ran out of bounds, referring to when Derrick Henry went out.
Too late.
also cited an incompletion that stopped the clock and said that the field goal kicker Gostkowski was struggling, so he didn't want him to get closer.
They got to chip shot range.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's not going to do it for me. I don't know about you, Mace. That didn't explain away. Again, the timeout should have started happening the second they got into field goal range.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one doesn't make sense. And then, I was talking about the injuries. No KJ Hamler either. This offense was extremely shorthanded. You saw a lot of Tim Patrick, a lot of Deshaun Hamilton. And, 3 months ago when we're talking about this offense, those guys were afterthoughts. They were a big part of it today. Even Royce Freeman came in and actually made a big play on the touchdown drive. But again, another guy who you just weren't expecting to see. So it's one of those things where you almost stole one that probably it just would have been a coup to get this win, and yet I feel like they should have won the game, and it's like one of these things where if you get the win today, so much is wiped away, so much is forgiven, and the opposite happens, and it just feels like a real lost opportunity to get one that maybe you shouldn't have based on the personnel that you had out there.
At the same time, though, the Titans and Gostkowski, with missing 3 field goals, that's 3 lengthy drives, 55 yards and over, that didn't result in any points. So if you're the Titans, you feel like you survived, but you also feel like the game shouldn't have been that close. And a reason why the Broncos were in it was because the Titans were squandering those scoring opportunities. So it kind of works both ways here. And that's sort of why I come back to the whole thing of this being almost like a preseason game. It's 2 teams that are lamenting a lot of things that went wrong. Just the Titans happened to steal it. The Broncos didn't. You hope it's not the difference in early January between being the 7th seed and being out of the postseason.
Yeah. Just a really tough one. I do though. I feel like there's things to build on in this game, and I get the frustration in Broncos country because it was an extremely frustrating game to watch. But there's a lot to build on, and I think Drew Lock is the main part of that. Is you feel really good about the way that he played. The one critique you would have, in my opinion, is just some overthrows on a couple of shots that could have been there if he made those passes. But you feel great about that. I'm kind of sick for Jerry Jeudy because he played a good game, if you take away those 2 drops, but you can't take away the 2 drops. Both of them loomed very large in the outcome of this game, especially the second one. And it just hurts. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you have a young team, they make young mistakes. And that was evident all over the place. Even Alexander Johnson, which probably a BS call, to be honest, but just unnecessary, which was the call, unnecessary roughness, and there's just all over the field. Melvin Gordon's fumble. It's just like, it's one of those things where you say, okay, week 1, young team, this, that, the other thing. But I do hurt for Jerry Jeudy because it just, a good game turns into one where he's probably going to have a hard time sleeping tonight. Yeah,
he's going to take some time to get over it, but he's strong enough. He's resilient. I think eventually he'll be fine. It might be good for a rookie to have a game like that. It's something that he can learn from. And we see the quote there from Drew Lock that Jeudy wanted to do well so bad he kind of forced some things on himself. And he does put a lot of pressure on himself. We posted Zach's tweet earlier about Noah Fant and what Vic Fangio said about why he didn't have any opportunities in the second half. And this is one that's a head scratcher. I'm sorry. Fangio says that Noah Fant's slow second half was a product of all the 3 and outs. You can still throw to him on 1st and 2nd down, right?
Yes, you can.
Okay. All right. Just clarifying there.
Yeah.
He was the most reliable component of the Broncos passing game tonight. And you should have been, even if you're trying to force it a little bit, finding ways to get him the ball, because the Titans, the one aspect of the Broncos offense the Titans didn't have any answers for tonight was Noah Fant.
I know, and that's one of those things where it's like you watch Andy Reid, right? and he identifies a mismatch in the first quarter, and he says, we're going back to this until you force us to do something else.
Right.
And it felt like the Broncos completely let the Titans off the hook when it came to Noah Fant. Like, this is why you drafted this guy in the first round, because he's a mismatch nightmare.
Yeah.
And you had it. You had the mismatch, and you didn't capitalize.
He's getting wide open. I mean, there was the one play that he had to the right side. There's not a defender within 6 yards of him.
Yep.
They didn't know what to do to contain him. They didn't have a matchup that worked with Noah Fant. So just keep feeding him, even if it is on first and second down. Keep finding ways to get him the ball. There's not a limit on how many times you can target him. And right now, with Jerry Jeudy having a rookie day, with Cortland Sutton not out there, you could argue that Noah Fant is the alpha of those pass catchers, or he was the alpha tonight, and you should have been getting the ball more.
Yeah. Question here comes in from Ben Furu 0. Says BS call on Alexander Johnson. Why would they not show it on replay? Fishy much. I agree. I guess that you can lean back on that. It's the first game for everyone, but it was whack of ESPN to not show the replay. Brett Kane on Twitter, our friend over there from Altitude Sports Radio, he rewound on his TV and showed the play. Again, I thought it was going to be really, really bad, and it's pretty bad. Derrick Henry's not looking. Alexander Johnson just kind of runs at him and shoves him. And, by the term unnecessary roughness, it was kind of unnecessary roughness. I just don't know, like, especially after the refs came together and had that long conversation. I'd just like them to say, like, this is a man's sport, and people are going to get shoved around, and we're not going to overturn such a big play on an inconsequential shove.
Or this is where you need the AAF sky judge.
Yeah,
that they had upstairs. And I know the XFL had something similar back earlier this year, which seems like 10 years ago, really. But someone to say, okay, we're able to see the all 22 up here, and that is the angle that immediately probably would have revealed it, because you could have seen it and then it said, okay, fine. I mean, it's one of those things where I know someone suggested maybe it's fishy. I don't think there's anything fishy about it. I think the conversation is that it's probably away from the ball. So, you know what? Maybe no official was looking in that direction when it happened.
Yeah, no, it's not necessarily fishy that they didn't show the replay, but I just felt like it was like, how do you not show the replay of a call that was such a big call at that moment? Yeah,
it felt like preseason for the ESPN crew as well for a lot of reasons. It wasn't that wasn't a great broadcast.
No, it wasn't. They also had it like second and goal when they were on the 25 on the graphic. It was sloppy all around.
And the gratuitous nerd bashing with the analytics comment. Man, that nothing makes me want to turn off a broadcast faster. Of course, then again, I am a nerd.
Yes. Well, you have the right to defend yourself on this broadcast.
I heard that and I'm like, next few Monday nights, I think I'm going to be listening to the radio.
Yeah, man,
or the Spanish broadcast.
You can go back. Terrific. Yeah, the Spanish broadcast is always good. Let's go back to the 4th and 1, because I really think it was a massive turning point in the game. Really the difference in this game is that on a 4th and 1 from the goal line, the Titans scored, and on a 4th and 1 from the goal line, the Broncos did not. I guess what bothers me more than anything about the play call is that it's a one lane play, if you know what I mean. Like, it's a pre-designed, this is what's going to happen. And you saw Drew Lock have a moment of like, is there any other options here? And I guess his other option would have been to just tuck it and run, but he kind of hesitated. The play was blown up, and there just wasn't much else to do. Personally, I would like to have a play there where, especially if you're going to throw the ball, go play action, boot out, and give Drew Lock two places to throw the ball, and also have the option to run the ball, and just have some outs if something goes wrong. That's kind of a play where if it's recognized and it goes wrong, it's done, and it's dead in the water.
Or simply some zone read option type stuff. I mean, I was thinking back to saying, okay, Drew Lock has some mobility. You could have few Tebow-like packages designed for 2-point conversions that could apply well. And that's if you don't want to do the simple thing, which is try to get it with power. Of course, that being said, a really nice play call on 2nd and goal when Drew had Nick Vanette open. I mean, that's the one that I think is going to keep Drew Lock up tonight.
And that is the one play all night that I said Garrett Bowles' name. And he deserves credit for that because he had a very nice game. Otherwise, it was just on that play. If he keeps that block for half a second longer, Drew probably gets to throw that pass without pressure in his face, and it's a touchdown. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, and you're never going to have a perfect game from an offensive lineman. But unfortunately, Bowles got beat there, and it forced Drew to rush it a little bit. And should he probably still make the throw? Yes. But it was the difference between an easy touchdown and a tougher throw, and he just didn't make the tough throw.
Yeah, and it is what it is there. I mean, it's frustrating, but Drew's made completions under pressure like that, so he's going to want that. He's going to want that one back. I'm glad you mentioned Garrett Bowles because I thought on first glance it was a solid game. I mean, we didn't call his name tonight, and Elijah Wilkinson, for the most part, did all right. I thought he got a little bit fatigued late, and it showed when he was up against a pass rush and he was allowing some more pressures.
Yep. Yeah, going back to that 4th down play, it's just if you call something better and you score there. I also would have liked to see Melvin Gordon get a carry. I don't think he got a carry in that set.
He did. He got a carry. It was Phil. Then it was the pass to Vanette. Then it was Melvin off left guard for no gain. Okay. And then it was the pass to Jake Butt. And I just bashed the ESPN broadcast, but I think their analysis succinct was spot on. You just got too cute there.
Too cute. And also, like, I realize, I think, maybe you're going from like a decoy angle here, but if you're going to run that play, give it to the 6'5" guy who's 250 pounds, who runs really fast and is powerful. The guy that you drafted in the first round to score you touchdowns in the red zone, Noah Fant, who already scored one on that. Like, that play should be going to Noah Fant and Noah Fant only, unless Albert Okwuegbunam is on the field.
Yeah, and I don't, as good as Albert O's been, unless there are injuries at the tight end position, I don't know that we're going to see much of Albert O for a while. Just it's a numbers game there. I don't think you're going to see the Broncos activate 5 tight ends, even though one of them is a fullback / H-back / special teamer. But Albert O is worth trying there. Jake Butt, not his best night to say the least, and he's been a great story, but the opportunities he had that play there. Although you got to give credit to Jeffrey Simmons for diagnosing it perfectly and blowing it up. The Titans, I have to say, while Jarrell Casey did very well for the Broncos tonight, Titans kind of knew what they were doing because they had to get some cash and cap savings to get Tannehill and Derrick Henry signed, and they've invested heavily in the front 7, and they've got some beasts up there, and Jeffrey Simmons is going to be maybe the biggest beast of all in that front 7.
Yeah, I still don't. I don't think that team's going far. That's just my belief. It's interesting. I feel like there's a lot of people who deserve helmet stickers in this one, and a couple guys and coaches who didn't have their best game. One guy who didn't have his best game, notably, I think, is Justin Simmons.
Yeah.
It's almost. I don't know if it's fair to say the Broncos were betting against him this season. But they certainly didn't bet on him with a big contract. They, of course, gave him the franchise tag, which just happens to be a lot of money. But you didn't feel him. I did not feel his impact on this football game.
Yeah, and the Titans and Tannehill in particular were doing a good job exploiting that gap in the zone between Josie Jewell and Justin Simmons. And in the first half in particular with Corey Davis, a guy who's really been hot and cold his entire career, well, Davis really got hot for something that we haven't seen a lot over the last few years. And they were going right at the spot in the zone underneath Justin Simmons. And of course, on that touchdown where Jonnu Smith is wide open, miscommunication. And honestly, that there on that 4th and goal, if you don't have things right pre-snap, somebody's got to call timeout.
Yeah,
that's a high leverage situation. Somebody's got to put a stop to that before the snap. They didn't look prepared coming out of the huddle on that play.
I agree. Mace, a lot of people in the comments here asking if we know anything about Phillip Lindsay's injury. Was that revealed? Maybe producer Allie can look into that as well. From if there are any tweets from Zac on that.
Yeah, I'm going through Twitter right now myself. So looks like turf toe.
Okay, that's probably the best case scenario of a foot injury. When they said he's out with a foot injury, I started running through all the potential foot injuries in my head.
Yeah.
And
you started at the top, the worst one, Liz Frank. That's the career threatener. And turf toe is down there in terms of a career threatener, but it's something that probably is going to have a recovery time that isn't measured in days, but weeks. I think you have to count on him not being out there against Pittsburgh next week if you want to make sure you get him right. And maybe you're shooting for Tampa Bay.
Man, and these are just stacking up. Turf toe is another one. It's similar to an ankle sprain in the sense that the only way it gets right is with a lot of rest, more rest than you're ever willing to give a football player during a season. So that's probably going to bother Phillip Lindsay for the rest of the year. It's the same as Courtland Sutton, whose AC joint sprain is going to bother him for the rest of the year. And now you have A.J. Bouye, who, again, we haven't even talked about that injury yet. He goes out.
Shoulder. Yep.
Popped his shoulder out of place. And so that's another one. It's the same sort of thing that's going to pop. That's going to, that's not going to be comfortable anytime soon.
Well, I think back to Champ Bailey playing an entire season back in 2005 with a harness. And he had the injury, I believe, same week in the season. It happened in week 1 against Miami that year, and he played very well. So if it's that type of injury, it's something that he can function with, but we don't yet know the severity of it. Obviously, there are varying degrees to it. So, we're going to be watching Courtland's AC joint. We're going to be watching A.J. Bouye's shoulder. With Bouye out, we of course saw a lot more of Ojemudia, and it was some hot, some cold. Also saw a lot of Essang Bassey. That the interesting thing there, I think, is as we were able to kind of get a feel for the depth at quarterback tonight, that Ojemudia, of course, was the 3, but Essang Bassey is the 4, not Devontae Harris.
Yeah, and hat tip to Essang Bassey, who I thought did a very admirable job coming in as a undrafted free agent off the, just right into the game. And it was one that, we were kind of giving him credit throughout training camp, but without preseason games, we had no idea where he stood. And then all of a sudden one day he's repping with the ones, and it was like, oh, okay. So they are, high on him, and credit to him. Cause again, I thought he went out and played a pretty darn good game. Of course, if you're tuning in on the live portion here, that's brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery. And of course, the presenting sponsor of the show is always MSU Denver Online. Go to msudenver.edu/online to scope out all they have to offer. Rigorous and affordable online programs taught by professors who bring the real world into the classroom. Mace, if I told you before that, 2 weeks ago, no Courtland Sutton, no Von Miller, no KJ Hamler. You only get one half of Phillip Lindsay and one half of A.J. Bouye. Would you have thought the Broncos were going to win this game?
No, not at all.
Also no Todd Davis, which that one was my choice. But
also, we talk about Essang Bassey stepping in. Josie Jewell, for the most part, had a good game. And both Essang Bassey and Josie Jewell with big plays bringing down Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had the quietest 100-yard rushing game you can possibly imagine, 3.7 yards per carry. And a lot of that was due to the really good work on the second and third lines of defense that kept him from having those back-breaking gallops that he's prone to have when he wears down a defense, that usually he starts gashing you for 10, 15, 20 yards because he's breaking through those tackles at the second level. And those guys, they just weren't allowing it tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you had you do take your hat off to Josie Jewell. The one worry I have is this was probably the best matchup Josie Jewell is going to see all year because what his job was to go downhill and try and stop Derrick Henry. And I even think that they probably told him, hey, if you bite on a play action fake or two and there's something open a little bit behind you, we'll live with it. We're not going to live with, being on our heels as Derrick Henry runs us over for 7 yards at a time. And I thought he did a great job of that very specific task. I just think it's going to get harder for him from here on out.
That's where you hope you have Mark Barron out there at some point. They got to be cautious with the hamstring, but here you are now staring down the barrel of Ben Roethlisberger and Tom Brady, and a lot of good targets that can cause you a lot of problems.
Well, something that we're going to be doing every game is giving out our DraftKings King of the Game. And first of all, shout out to DraftKings Sportsbook. They make watching sports more fun. But our DraftKings King of the Game tonight, it was going to be Steven Gostkowski if he could just miss one more.
Ouch! That's cruel, RK. That is honestly, that would have been twisting the knife in a way that I'm just not willing to do.
He's the king of the to this point. He's even the king of the game for both teams. Like the Broncos were in the game because of him, and the Titans won the game because of him. But we do have our DraftKings King of the Game, and for me, it's Drew Lock. I just thought he was admirable out there. He looked like he was in control of the team. He looked like he's in control of the offense. He looked like a leader. He looked like he's taking a step forward. And I think that the Broncos, of anything coming out of this game feeling really good about their quarterback.
Yeah, I can't argue with that choice. I mean, if Alexander Johnson doesn't have the penalty, I think you can make an argument for him because he was everywhere tonight with 12 tackles. And then the other guy you can make an argument for is Noah Fant with 6 catches for 81 yards and doing a great job of really filling in the gap for Cortland Sutton. You were thinking, okay, where's the production going to come from? Who's going to step up? And it was Noah Fant. And I think one thing that was apparent to me when in the training camp practices that I watched is that while Drew Lock obviously trusts Cortland Sutton more than anybody else, that right now, right behind Cortland Sutton is Noah Fant. And that's something that I think is going to continue growing with games like this. And this is where it becomes really intriguing once you get Sutton back out there, because having the guy like Fant who can force the safeties to rotate away from Sutton and not give so much attention to him downfield, it's going to open things up. So, I mean, I don't want to be Pollyanna here, but there are an awful lot of positives that you can point to about this offense doing what it did and what it did tonight. And I feel pretty good that the game that Noah Fant had today is going to result in a win that maybe we didn't see coming at some point during the season, because some team is not going to have an answer for him, and the Broncos won't go away from him in the second half like they did.
Yeah, and you saw that quote there.
Yeah,
Zac Stevens. He's channeling his inner MPJ there, but he's right. Like, all he had to add in there was, if we wanted to beat that team, I think we needed to spread the ball around a little more.
Well,
but I'm with you, Mace. It's hard when you lose in week 1 to not be frustrated by just all the little things that went wrong that caused you to lose. But the Broncos definitely have building pieces here. They are a very young team. You and Zach both kind of had the feeling that they were going to lose this one and begin to figure things out along the way.
And we got ripped for it on social media when we put out the pick graphic. I was like,
that was predictable.
And I'm just like, hey. And that's why I'm like, hey, somebody picked them to be a playoff team. And actually, like today on the radio, we were having this discussion, and Eric Goodman says, so you're saying they're going to be 0-3 and be a playoff team? And I said, yep, that's right. So I think this team is going to get exponentially better over the course of the year, and it's going to be games like this where we see good things happening and we see mistakes that can be corrected that are going to be a reason why this team improves. And for an example of how a team can grow from a day where a lot goes wrong, just look at the team that beat you tonight, because they don't have the run that they have if they don't get stomped here 16-0 last year, just embarrassed. That forced change upon them. They grew from that. They learned from that. They became a better team. I think the Broncos are going to be a better team because of the things that were shortcomings tonight, but also the things that they did well that they can apply more extensively in the future.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think like someone like Jerry Jeudy really learns from this game. I thought Drew said it best when he said he's just trying to do too much. If you go back and you look at the first drop, he has a chance there if he makes one guy miss to be off to the races.
Yeah.
And he knew that too. And he started thinking about how he's going to make that guy miss before he thought about how he's going to catch the football. The second one, I don't know. That one, it hurts more, obviously. And I don't know what he was thinking there, because if you just move the chains on that drive, you are fully in control of the football game. You're in field goal range, and you're going to take, another minute at least off the clock. And I'm sure that's what he's thinking about right now. And because of that, I think next week you'll see that when Jerry Jeudy gets the ball, he's going to make sure it's in his hands before he starts trying to make moves.
Maybe the problem was that he was thinking, period.
Yeah.
It's the old quote from Bull Durham when Crash Davis tells Nuke LaLoosh, don't think, it can only hurt the ball club. Just catch the ball. Don't think about what's next. Just, you have the task in front of you. Catch the ball, then worry about what comes next.
Absolutely. Yeah. Quickly, a shout out to Breckenridge Brewery, who of course, helped the people here at the DNVR bar drink away their sorrows. Also, there were some celebratory RK specials going around after the first touchdown. That was always nice to see. But whatever your favorite type of beer is, Breck Brew has something for you. Check them out anywhere where you get your beers. And if you can't find them at your local liquor store, you can use the Breck Brew locator to find where they might have some near you. So shout out to Breckenridge Brewery. And also a shout out to DraftKings Sportsbook. It was great seeing teams out on the gridiron over the weekend, but that was just week one. There's no better place to get in on all the action than at DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. So to add to the excitement of week two, DraftKings is bringing back their can't-miss offer. DraftKings is giving all new users a chance to turn $1 into $100 betting on any NFL team. Pick the biggest underdog favorite of the week, the biggest spread out there. You can bet on the favorite, and if they come through, you can turn $1 into $100. So check out DraftKings Sportsbook. We all have a great time using it out here. So check out DraftKings Sportsbook. Use that code DNVR when you sign up, and you can get a sign-up bonus up to $1,000. Of course, you must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. The deposit bonus requires a 25x playthrough, and restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. Well, Zach is just talking to every player under the sun right now. I'm chomping at the bit to see what he has to say when he finally gets off the longest presser streak of all time.
Well, it's the only way we're talking to guys after games this year. So ordinarily you'd get the coach, 2 players at the podium, maybe 3 sometimes, but then you'd be able to talk to a handful more in the locker room. So I wonder if they're just going to stack all these guys one by one every week in order to at least somewhat replicate what we would ordinarily get. Of course, the thing that we're missing is the small group stuff, the one-on-one stuff, and unfortunately, that's going to lead to some homogenized type of coverage this year. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Mace, if I asked you what's the biggest reason the Broncos lost this game, what would your answer be? And it doesn't have to be a person, or it could be anything.
Biggest reason was, oh boy. I mean, I'd say the biggest reason was a failure to capitalize on opportunities. Yeah. And I think back to not only what happened at the goal line, but also some promising possessions that kind of petered out. You had like the first drive, for example. I mean, the Broncos only get to the 37-yard line, but they've got momentum, and it just kind of fizzled out a little bit. I felt like there were that, and then the other thing you point to is in the third quarter, the play calling, and we've talked about it with Noah Fant and Vic Fangio referencing the 3 and outs. Well, you have 2 possessions in the third quarter, and they go 3 and out, and you allow the Titans to get some momentum, get the win back in their sails. One thing that's interesting is as I'm looking at the possession data here, is that early in the second half, going into the fourth quarter, while the Broncos had 2 drives that lasted 61 and 97 seconds, the Titans had 2 marches, one to a missed field goal and one to the touchdown that lasted 6:31 and 7:02. And then later in the fourth quarter, when the Broncos went 3 and out and they were up and they needed to choose some clock, 61 seconds, they held the ball. And one thing that I noticed on that last drive, as the Titans were driving to a field goal, yes, the Denver in coverage was playing back a little bit, but that was the moment where I actually saw some hands on hips and guys breathing heavily on the defensive side. That was the moment where they actually looked tired. And I wonder if the first 2 drives of the second half of the Titans that were 14 and 15 plays, while the Broncos did not have a drive in the second half longer than 9 plays and went 3 and out 3 times, I wonder if that had an impact on what happened at the end.
It absolutely did. And I think you hit the nail on the head there with a few different things. For me, and maybe this is a little bit of a cop-out, but to me, it just comes down to unforced errors.
Yeah.
The Melvin Gordon fumble, I said it up here in the lounge at the DNVR bar. I said, that's a game-changing play right there. You have all the momentum, you fumble the ball, you give them a ball in scoring range, they go score it. That just felt like a big chance for the Broncos to start to take control of the game, and it went the exact opposite way. So that's one that was unforced. The 2 Judy drops, unforced. The Alexander Johnson penalty, unforced. And Vic Fangio not knowing how to make his hands into a T, unforced. So just a lot of stuff that's like easily correctable, but is also just right on you. Look in the mirror and figure that out. That's on you.
Yeah. How many times, like last year, there were some games that the Broncos lost that were on them, but there were also a lot of games the Broncos lost because they just weren't good enough. Today, you didn't lose because you weren't good enough. It was in your hands, even with the fact that you were gift wrapped 9 points in terms of margin because Gostkowski, or 10 points, pardon me, because he missed the PAT. You were given 10 points, which, by the way, what's interesting is that if he'd hit all those kicks, they would have had 26 points, which is what their offense averages per 60 minutes with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback last year. So, there were, they gave you some stuff, but you gave them some stuff too. It was just if they met and both teams were more efficient, honestly, I'm not sure who wins.
Yeah.
But it felt like a lot of the miscues, one hand kind of washed the other a little bit. And so another positive thing that you take is that the Titans, I know you probably don't think as highly of them as I do, but this looks like a team that can win 10, 11 games and is going to win the AFC South.
And quickly, go ahead. And
you hung with them and you had the game in your hands. So I'm feeling pretty good about that aspect of it, that they hung in. But now when you play teams that are kind of in your category, the middle tier, the mediocre to good but not great teams, now you've got to probably get another one to make up for this. I mean, you should beat the Jets. They're terrible. You should beat the Dolphins. They're not very good. But now to make up for something like this, got to go to New England and beat the Patriots, a team that looks like they're right in that same category as the Broncos and Titans, fighting for playoff spots that aren't going to be the top 2 seeds.
Quickly to Connor in the comments, who said we finally addressed Vic Fangio. Go back and rewind to the very beginning of this, because I had a rant that's just for you. And speaking of Vic Fangio, in all things, we're getting ready to bring in our guy, Zac Stevens, who I'm sure will have some quotes for us from the head coach. Can't wait to hear what he says. So let's bring in Zac.
Aye, my boys. Wow. Not after 4 missed field goals, it wasn't the outcome I was expecting.
You're coming in pretty hot there, Zac.
hot in every way. Yeah,
I meant by his levels.
I mean, there were some seasons for Gostkowski that involved 4 missed kicks, let alone a game. I mean, this is highly unusual for him. That's a frustrating thing, Zac. In a way, you were gift wrapped this game, and you gave it right back.
Well, and Vic Fangio was counting on him to miss that, guys. He was counting, and that was one of the reasons why the Broncos did not. Sorry, I had a call coming in. That was one of the reasons that the Broncos did not use timeouts at the end. The Broncos chose not to use timeouts because Vic didn't want to get him any closer, because he thought that he was potentially going to miss for a 5th time. And guys, honestly, I couldn't have felt more opposite than Vic. I mean, once they got the ball and had some time on the clock, I thought, just like everyone thought, oh my gosh, he's going to nail it. I don't care if it's a 62-yarder. He is going to nail it. And of course, it wasn't a 62-yarder, but that's what happened. The other reason that Vic take the timeouts was he said, well, the Titans ran out of bounds and then they threw an incompletion. Well, there was still a lot of other time that trickled off the clock.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that because remember last year, Indianapolis, Adam Vinatieri misses a field goal, misses an extra point, and then he comes out what was like a 56-yarder in the last minute, boots it right through. Just because a kicker's having a bad day doesn't mean you can count on that bad day continuing to miss another kick.
Yeah, I like Zach said, I'm actually I was the opposite of Vic Fangio. People often use the law of averages wrong, and I'm probably using it wrong right now. But the law of averages told me that okay, he's not going to miss 5. The fact that he missed 2 was an anomaly. The fact that he missed 3 was a crazy anomaly. The fact that he missed an extra point on top of that is almost impossible. Him missing another one was not even there was just no chance of that happening. And especially from up close, which, Vic Fangio, I saw your tweet, Zach. Vic Fangio said, I didn't want to let him get closer. Well, what you did didn't work at all because he got plenty close. It's not like it's not like they were driving and they're at the 35-yard line with 7 seconds left and he didn't want to take a timeout. Like it was inside of what it is for an extra point, I'm pretty sure. So there's no excuse for Vic. There was already nothing he could say that was going to change my mind that he completely botched that, and nothing that he said even moved the needle one tiny little bit for me.
No, I agree. And what's such a bummer on top of that was you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh, wait, there's 17 seconds left, 2 timeouts. I don't feel terrible about this. What if there was 41 seconds? I'm not even saying that there's 2 minutes. What if there's 41 seconds? And with the Titans, they would still be playing a little cushion defense to make sure the Broncos didn't get over the top of them. Then you're feeling great. 41 seconds, 2 timeouts. Heck, let's say you use all those timeouts. 41 seconds, no timeouts. You're probably still going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said to Mace at the top of the show. I'm like, I still thought there was a chance with 17 seconds. I would have felt amazing if there was even 30 seconds on the clock. The Broncos just needing to really get 25 yards or maybe even 30 to give Brandon McManus a decent chance. Oh yeah,
I wanted them to try the 75-yarder just because.
I mean, what I just
would have had a better shot in the play they ran.
Exactly. Well, I don't know how. I mean, there should have been a route for Drew to throw to because they had to see that there was pressure coming. I was just thinking, okay, get it into Jerry Jeudy's hands and let him try and juke someone out of their shoes and get behind someone, and then you can start doing the pitch play. But even, I mean, I would have been fine with the 75-yarder over that.
Yeah, I agree. And guys, I'm told I'm coming in pretty hot in multiple ways on this pod. So let me know if my levels are a little better right now. Is that a little better?
A little better. Maybe you can move away from your microphone a little bit.
Okay, I'll take it away. Okay. But guys, there was something else that was even more concerning to me that I heard after the game. And it was about coaching, but it didn't have to do with Vic Fangio. I asked Noah Fant, what happened? You had 81 yards in the first half, 0 in the second half. You had 1 target in the second half. Really reminded me of George Kittle's game a couple of years ago against the Broncos. Of course, so that one was on steroids when George Kittle had over 200 yards in the first half. And Noah Fant said, we just went in a different direction on the offensive side of the ball. And he said, I was okay with it. And I think that's a really good team thing to say from Noah. But guys, your tight end can't be stopped. He's 5 for 5 with the touchdown for 81 yards. He is really your only offense, and your quarterback's loving him. Pat, why are you going in a different direction?
He was your wide receiver 1 tonight with Cortland Sutton out. Like I was telling RK earlier, he was the alpha. You feed him the ball until they figure out how to stop him. I mean, he's making plays, and he's also wide freaking open. it was a riddle that they weren't figuring out. Just go with it until they adapt, and then you find another gear. But it was cash money, play after play. And I mean, I'm encouraged for Noah Fant because he was making guys miss, and he was extending plays after the catch. He was doing everything that you expect him to do. But keep feeding him the ball. If it's working, why go away from it? Don't overthink this.
Yeah, I don't know. That's another one that I'll put in the unforced errors category, Mace. That I was mentioning to you as I think the biggest issue. Like, just so many. You got cute in areas where you didn't need to get cute. You went away from things that were working for things that weren't. It just, I don't know, too much.
And you had 122 offensive yards in the second half. You don't deserve to win any single game that happened where you have that in the second half in a close game.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the Broncos weirdly should have won, didn't deserve to win, should have won in a blowout, should have lost in it. Like this game went in so many different directions. It's crazy, and I guess it was bound to come down to a field goal. But the Broncos are going to have a lot to improve on, and a lot that they're just kicking themselves about. Zach, anything else that really caught your ears from the pressers?
Everyone just seemed like we're close. We're there, and now we just have to turn around and beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. Well, Pittsburgh just had a really good game, and it's just going to be tough because there's all these small things that are fixable. But Ryan, like you mentioned, there's a lot of small things that happened, and it concerns me with all of these injuries. Phillip Lindsay has turf toe, and it looks like he may be out for a little bit of time. Melvin Gordon said the team's in good hands if he misses some time, of course, talking about himself. You have Cortland Sutton, who was close to playing but never got medical clearance. So I personally wouldn't even say that he's a guarantee to play next week. And A.J. Bouye shoulder injury, which we're not sure how severe that is. But I did like the way Ojemudia and Bassie played, but you didn't bring Bouye here to have these rookies be playing this year.
Absolutely. And I said it to Mace, I'll say it to you. If I told you that they weren't going to have Von Miller, they weren't going to have A.J. Bouye for half the game, they weren't going to have Phillip Lindsay for half the game, they weren't going to have KJ Hamler, they weren't going to have the guy who was supposed to be calling the plays on the defense for all of training camp. You go down the list, no one would have had them winning this game. And obviously you two picked the Titans to win in the first place, and both of you felt like this team was going to start slow and find their rhythm along the way. And I'll say it, you guys look like you're very right, because this is a team that could have won this game if they were in their rhythm, and they just weren't there yet.
Yeah. Exactly. And you don't look at Drew Lock and feel bad about him after this game. I feel good about Drew Lock. Now, when you feel good about the way your quarterback plays and you put up 14 points, it means that something's not clicking, right, guys? And to me, it comes back to that quote from Noah Fant. And that points directly to Pat Shurmur. What? Now, I understand Melvin Gordon had the fumble. You're going to have turnovers in most games. Drew didn't throw a pick, so that was where your turnover came. Unfortunate, you can't have it. I agree with you, Ryan. That really felt like the turning point of the game. But even with one turnover, you should be able to put up more than 14 points when Melvin Gordon had a pretty good game on the ground outside the fumble, when your quarterback is doing well, when your tight end is playing lights out for an entire half. So to me, this comes down to Pat Shurmur, and then obviously at the end, Vic Fangio, and it stings a lot when it's coaching.
Yeah,
absolutely. It really does. Again, and I think one of the reasons why this game hurts so much from a Broncos perspective is because Drew played well, and it feels like you should win games where your quarterback plays well, especially for Broncos fans who have been watching poor quarterback play for so many years. You just thought, okay, well, give us good quarterback play and win football games. And I thought you got good quarterback play. People in the comments have been not everyone, but a lot of people in the comments have been really critical of Drew. I mean, he missed a couple throws, but like I told Mace, he should have been 24 of 32, for 275 yards and a touchdown and no interceptions. Like, that should win you football games. And unfortunately, like you mentioned, Zach, it stings when it's coaching because it feels like coaching was at least one of the main reasons why the Broncos lost this game.
Yeah, it does. And the Titans came to Denver in the Mile High, and they played the game that the Broncos wanted to. Just dink and dunk, pounding it down the field. And in the end, Derrick Henry does top 100 yards. And since week 10 of last year, the Titans are undefeated when Derrick Henry tops 100 yards. So once he eclipsed that, it just seemed like, oh boy, this was going to happen. Although you still didn't feel bad about the run defense. You didn't feel bad about the pass defense, considering everything that was going on. The pass rush was there early, kind of faded as it went on. And that doesn't really surprise me, especially with Bradley Chubb. He's a guy that hasn't practiced it for most of the past 2 weeks. So I didn't expect him to be fresh the entire game playing a lot. And you chose to play him on the earlier side, and it was clear that he got pretty tired.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we go too much further, a shout out to WGT Golf. Go to DNVRGolf.com to download WGT Golf, and you can hang out with us every single weekend as we play our DNVR tournament. Of course, to do that, you'll go into the country club sections and type in DNVR3 to join the DNVR3 country club. 1 and 2 are already full, but don't worry, DNVR3 gets all the same benefits, and you'll get to play along with us every weekend as we all go head-to-head to try and see who sucks the least at WGT Golf. Usually, it's none of us who suck the least. But once in a while, we get a DNVR family member or a DNVR employee in the top 10, which we're pretty proud of. So anyways, go to DNVRGolf.com, download it, go into the country club section, go to DNVR3 to get in on WGT Golf today. And Zach, you want to tell the good folks about some rugby?
We have the best rugby coverage here at thednvr.com. Our guy Colton Strickler is taking you not just through all things Colorado rugby, but all things American rugby, as now Colorado is the heart and soul of that. Make sure to check out the rugby podcast that we've got going on, thednvr.com, our rugby coverage. Colton does such a great job on both platforms, and including Twitter, breaking down the game of rugby and breaking down everything that's going on. So make sure to check out thednvr.com and check out our rugby coverage.
All right, going into the final segment here, guys. Zach, I asked this to Mace. I want to get your thoughts on this. What do you think was the biggest single takeaway of this game, first of all, and what is the number one thing that you pin this loss on?
Well, there's hope. There's can't hear me?
No, you're good.
Oh, there's hope with this team because, like I said, liked what I saw from Drew Lock, liked what I saw from a lot of the pieces on offense. The offensive line wasn't terrible. Now, Elijah Wilkinson did get beat a pretty few good times in some important situations. So there's concern there. The defense looks solid. And at the end of the day, you were missing a lot of players throughout this game. You like holding the Titans to only 16 points. And it just feels like this offense is capable of a lot more than 14 points. And at the end, I think I've kind of said it already. It came down to coaching. At the end, I would have felt comfortable with this offense getting the ball back down 2 with 41 seconds left, with 59 seconds left. I would have felt comfortable that they would have been able to get a 50-yarder for Brandon McManus. Maybe he's hitting a 58-yarder, and you don't feel 100% comfortable about that because he hasn't been money from over 50. But gosh, at least you're giving yourself a chance. So you didn't do that. And then also the comment about the game plan just changing in the second half. Guys, in my notes, I have just so many good notes about how I loved the creativity on offense in the first half, specifically the first quarter. Loved that they had Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay on the field at the same time. Loved that they were trying a Judy end around, although it didn't work. Loved that they were getting Drew on boots. Loved the creativity. And then it vanished. It vanished in the second half. Of course, that third quarter, you had 3 yards. I mean, it's laughable at that point. If they would have done that for all 4 quarters, they would have had 12 freaking yards in the game. And the creativity was gone. So to me, you have the pieces, and I'm not saying you don't have the coaching, but tonight it wasn't good.
I think it's really hard to argue with anything that you just said. And it's funny. I feel great about the pieces as well. And you didn't have like half of them out there tonight.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts, Zach, on Jerry Jeudy and just his overall performance?
It's tough. It's tough. And you expect to see that occasionally from a rookie. You know, it's a little easier to swallow when a rookie starts off with 7 hot games and then this is their 8th game. It stinks for him that this was Monday Night Football, that this was his very first game in the NFL, and he has those obviously huge plays. You can't downplay how big those plays would have been, especially the second one. But he's going to bounce back. I saw it firsthand at training camp when he had a day where he had 2 drops and then he bounced back really well. So he'll bounce back well. I'm not concerned about him, but obviously two big plays there. And guys, I gotta get your take on the 4th and 1 play call and the 4th and 1 decision to go for it for the Broncos.
The decision to go for it was great. You should always do it unless you're in a situation where it's late in the game and a field goal wins it for you. Then you go ahead and kick. But the play call I thought was atrocious. It was described on the broadcast as too cute, and I tend to agree with it there. You had better options available to you.
Yeah, I'm exactly with Mace. Obviously, hindsight being 2020, you'd love to have those 3 points. That's enough to win you the football game.
Yeah.
But it's not really that simple. I say go for it every single time in that situation, like Mace said. But I told Mace this earlier in the broadcast. I just want a play that has options. And maybe that play has the flip to Phillip Lindsay. I don't know if that's a decoy or an actual option in the play. Maybe Drew Lock could have tucked it and ran and tried to, John Elway himself into the end zone. But it was such a one-way play to me, and I like to, on a 4th down in the red zone like that, to have multiple options. I want a play where Drew Lock has multiple people to throw it to. He can try to run. The defense is on its heels, scrambling, trying to guard people, and this just felt like it had one chance. If they didn't see it coming, it scores, and if they do see it coming, it doesn't score.
Yeah, I totally know what you're saying with that. And that's why it certainly wasn't the ideal play call. But this is why I wanted to ask you. I knew you guys had already talked about it. But I like the play call. I liked the play call because think about it this way. If that scores, it's a fantastic play. It's a play that the Broncos drew up, and it was a great little trick play that they had just for that situation. People would be saying, oh my gosh, what a fantastic play. So I want to look at it on that side. Was it a little gimmicky? Yeah, it was a little gimmicky. But now, I'm not running it to Jake Butt. I'm running it to Noah Fant. So, I mean, and again, it wasn't the perfect play call. What I'm probably doing is I'm doing what worked in the rest of the game with Drew Lock, and I'm putting him on a boot. If you're gonna send Drew, then send him outside. Then he can run. Then he can pass. You have 2 or 3 options. So I agree. It wasn't a perfect play call, but boy, I did not. I think, and I've been hard on Pat Shurmur, but I think he's getting a lot of hate for that.
I get what you're saying, that you want options. And I know RK mentioned you want options as well, but also think of this. You've invested an awful lot in draft capital and free agency money as well in the interior of your offensive line and the tight end position. Guys who can help clear a path to get you those tough yards. And then you invested $8 million for this year in Melvin Gordon, a power back who should be able to get you that yard behind those guys that you've got in front of him. You're designed to be able to get a tough yard there, a yard that you haven't gotten when you needed it over the last few years. So why get cute?
Yeah, I guess I see the point, what you're getting at, Zach, which is true, which is if it works, everyone loves it. Everyone's – but, if a tight end around to Noah Fant works, everyone loves it. Some plays, if they work, yeah, everyone loves every play that works great. But there's a reason some plays work, some plays don't. I felt like that one was too easily solvable for that defense. And to be honest, that play isn't special anymore. It's one of it's been done a bunch of times, and a defense, if they're communicating well, sees what's going on. They see the sprint out and they see the tight end there and they react. And the play wasn't working from the second that it was called. You could just see it. Drew didn't believe in it. Jake Butt wasn't sure if he should keep running or stop. It was just, it was awkward. I hated it.
And isn't it just crazy that then the Titans have the exact same situation on the other goal line, 4th and goal from the 1. They do a play that probably has multiple looks, get the touchdown. Justin Simmons, I asked him after the game what happened on that play, because obviously the tight end was wide open. And he said it was an awkward formation that we had never seen before. And he said it caught a lot of our assignments off. And so, I mean, that was the complete opposite. That was a winning play from the moment they lined up. It's pretty much what Justin said.
And when you see that on 4th and goal, somebody has to take time out.
Mace, you can't do that. You can't call timeout there because you need them to hold in your pocket when you walk off the field later.
I knew you were going there.
Oh, yikes.
Oh, man. I mean, that's as high leverage as it gets. You don't want to use timeouts willy-nilly until you get down to the last minutes, but 4th and goal in the 4th quarter, and if you can't recognize their formation, you've got some confusion. That's a high leverage moment where you get a TO, baby, as Dickie V would say.
Yep, you absolutely do, because at the end of the game, let's say the Broncos needed one extra timeout in order to take a timeout to kick a 55-yarder or something like that, but you burned it because you stopped them on 4th and goal because you had to take that timeout. Mm-hmm. Well, once all of us find that out, then it's okay. Well, unfortunately, you were one timeout too short. No one's blaming you for that. And then you walk off the field with a couple of them in your pocket.
Oh, yeah. I hate to say it, but I'm going to be talking about those timeouts for a long time. Every time there's a playoff, if they're lucky enough to be in the playoff race, I'm going to be talking about those timeouts. It's going to be really hard for me to get over that. There's just absolutely no defense for it. I'm out of words, as you can tell.
And on one end, the Broncos should have won this game. On another end, this is a game that the Broncos shouldn't have won because their kicker missed 10 points. Yeah. So they could have easily won by 12 points at home. Then this would be a whole different story if the Broncos didn't lose by 2 points. They lost by 12. I think our tone would be a little different with this team right now. But so it's interesting how you can look at this game in two ways, where it slipped through their hands, or they kind of just got lucky to only lose by 2.
Yeah, and that's a good pivot point here, because I think all of that is going to come down to how they play next weekend. If they play really well and they find a way to win that game, well, I'm talking about timeouts again. If they play poorly and they get smoked, well, we're talking about field goals and not timeouts. And we're talking about how, oh, God, they should have lost by double digits at home in week 1, and now they just laid an egg in week 2. Okay, now, it might be time to panic. The narrative is always ready to change. And the Broncos are really going to have to figure some things out. But again, man, as short-handed as they were, they moved the ball. They were in position. They had a chance to win the game if they make one more play, really. And there's a lot to build on there. But again, it's all going to teeter on how they look next weekend.
Yeah, it really will. And that's going to be a tough game. Ben Roethlisberger just became the 3rd player to have, I think he has the 3rd most 3 touchdown game passes, going along with Drew Brees and Peyton Manning, I believe. So some pretty good company. He's playing good coming off that injury. You got a short week coming off a game where you just tackled Derrick Henry 31 times. I got to imagine, man, that's a pretty tough situation to then turn around, get home on Tuesday morning right now for these guys, and then they're flying for an 11 a.m. game Sunday morning. But you know what? No excuses, because we know how much slow starts can hurt. The Broncos finished 4-1 under Drew Lock and were, never really in the playoff conversation last year. They finished hot, but an 0-4 start kills teams, kills them.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I watched the Steelers game. They're not a team that should scare you. I think the Broncos, go in and play a good football game and will have a great chance to win that game. They did an incredible job taking away Saquon Barkley. I've never seen anything like it. Saquon Barkley in the first half did not cross the line of scrimmage. he got tackled behind the line of scrimmage every single time he touched the ball, except for on a screen pass. It was shocking. He had 8 carries for -8 yards at one point in the game. So, their game plan is obviously going to be different. Obviously, they went into that game saying, take away Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones has no chance of beating you. They won that bet. So it's going to be interesting to see how they attack the Broncos. It's a shame that they don't have, or I guess I shouldn't say it yet, but there's a good chance they're not going to have Phillip Lindsay. I thought Phillip Lindsay was going to be a big part of the game plan throughout the entire game tonight. And, even just that little Texas route with him coming out of the backfield, out from the fullback position was like, it was so good, and it just needs one more yard, and it's like a perfect play. And I loved the way they used him creatively, and now that's gone, for probably a week at least. It just sucks because I think that was a big part of why Pat Shurmur struggled to start the second half, is they had a big role in vision for Phillip Lindsay, and they had that kind of taken out from under them. How
cool was it to see Phillip Lindsay lined up as a fullback? I mean, I love that creativity and the mismatch that could create. I mean, heck, the Titans may have needed to call a timeout when they saw that, because they realized they had a 250-pound slow linebacker lined up on him. I mean, that's the creativity that I love to see in the first quarter, and it just slowly slipped away until there was just none of it in the second half.
I think it was a little bit of TSS, tight sphincter syndrome. Sometimes we see it set in over the course of a game.
It definitely it might. No, actually, it wasn't. That's not what got Jerry Jeudy. Jerry was just trying. He needs to realize that he doesn't need to score a touchdown every time he touches the ball.
And that's exactly what I don't remember who said it. Drew said it after the game. He said he was just trying to go out there and ball, and that's something he'll learn, that you can't do everything on every single play. But that's who Jerry Jeudy is. He's a playmaker. That's what he did at Alabama. He made big plays time and time again. And you know what? It's okay to catch a 12-yard pass and then get tackled. It's okay to catch a 20-yard pass and get tackled. Catch the pass first. Look it in. He was just trying to make a play. I'm not worried about Jerry at all.
I mean, the flashes were so flashy.
Yeah.
And he's gonna make people, their eyes pop all season long. He's only gonna get better. It was. I don't know if you saw some of the praise just being poured out from other NFL players watching him go to work out there. I specifically retweeted TJ Ward, who said he's the fastest off the line in the world. It's unbelievable. He'll get rid of the drops. It was, we can't ignore the fact that it was one of the knocks on him coming out of college. So it's not as if it was just a first game jitters thing, although I think that played a little bit of a role in it. It just looked like trying to score a touchdown every time he got it. But I think he'll get better. This Broncos offense will get better when they get healthier. There's a lot to build on here. And like I said, it's going to come down to how they perform next week before I think the story is written about what happened in this game.
I like that. I like it a lot. We're either going to be talking about touchdowns or timeouts or field goals after next week.
Of course, and hey, there shouldn't be a home field advantage for the Steelers, at least not much of it. And I think we saw tonight at times how the Broncos did lose something, not having a home field advantage, because the Titans had a couple of drives where they were backed up deep in their own territory at the north end, and it just sounded like a preseason game. Definitely the Broncos, I thought, were hurt by not having fans in the stands. And so maybe it'll work the other way next week for the Steelers back at Heinz Field.
So, Mace, I want to agree with you, because I definitely think that at the end of the game, the Broncos would have benefited from having a loud crowd here. But does Gostkowski actually maybe make a field goal? I mean, it's not like he would have been worse if there were fans here, right? I mean, maybe he would have gone 0 for 5.
Well, maybe you would have had a scenario like that drive where they were still after the failed 4th and goal, and they're starting at the 1. Maybe you get them 3 and out with the crowd, because what we always see is that the offense might fail in 4th and goal, but then the crowd's going to kind of have the team's back, and maybe they force a little discombobulation on the Titans, and maybe instead of them driving down to a missed field goal, instead maybe they go 3 and out, punt, Broncos get in good field position and drive to at least a field goal on the next drive.
So Mace adding Jared Polis to the people who deserve blame for the loss.
Oh no, I'm adding I'm the virus, people who won't take the steps necessary to contain the virus, because in places where it was at least reasonably contained, Australia's got more people at games. New Zealand had full houses for rugby matches. Yes, that's what I'm blaming.
I shouldn't have opened that can of worms.
Sorry. I'll
Speaking
get
of
into trouble for that, I'm sure, but I don't care.
Opening a can of worms, did you guys see Steven Gostkowski, what he said after the game about taking off his shoe?
No.
So he took off his shoe on the sideline before the last kick.
What was he doing, honoring Rich Carlos?
I think he was just changing the juju, but he said he would have taken off his pants if he would have known it would have helped him make that kick.
Hey, now.
Whatever it takes.
Hey.
Mike Vrabel has said more graphic things than that about stuff going on below the belt.
And wasn't it so fitting that Mike Vrabel is wearing the mask that says, give Derrick Henry the ball, and then they come out and they don't give him the ball for the first many plays of the game. I just thought this was so predictable.
Yeah, he knew that was coming, but then they gave it to him 31 times.
Yeah.
Then they gave it to him a lot. All right. Well, before we get out of here, another shout out to WGT. Like I said, go to dnvrgolf.com, download the WGT app, go into the country club section, join the DNVR 3 Country Club, join us as we play every single weekend. It's really a good time. So we always have fun with it, and it'll be a good way to lead up to Broncos games coming up. The good news, guys, only 6 more days until the Broncos play again, and we get to write that narrative and see how they respond to this, because I do think they have a great chance to correct some of these issues and play a much better football game next week.
It's one game. It's one game. I expected a slow start. I still expect that. This doesn't change my outlook on the Broncos this year. And if they bounce back next week, that's a game that I didn't have them winning when I did my prediction. And so that would be, it would completely right this game. Almost, because we didn't really have the Broncos going 16-0. We knew it was going to be slow. And at the end, I'm taking a step back saying it's a bummer that they lost this game. But I'm not saying, oh, man, this is such a bad team that we've got to roll with. I'm not saying that at all, because I don't feel like that, because I don't think that's what we saw on the field today.
Completely agree. Drew Lock, you feel better about him than you did before this game, in my opinion. And that's honestly the most important thing of this season, is Drew Lock maturing and progressing. And I think he did that tonight. And with that,
completely agree.
I think that's going to wrap it up for us on this post-game show. The live portion, of course, presented by Breckenridge Brewery. So shout out to Breck Brew for bringing you this live show. Thanks to everyone who rode along with us and vented in the comments. I know it seemed like you guys got a lot of frustrations out in there. So I hope everyone's feeling better. Of course, we'll always be back with you tomorrow. And tomorrow's no different. So we will talk to you tomorrow morning, and have a great night, guys.